Welcome to Time Traveling Team, the weekly podcast where we review every story of Doctor Who right from the very beginning. I'm Paddy.
And I'm Tricia. This week we'll continue our rambling through the Peter Cushing Doctor Who films with Daleks Invasion Earth, 2150 AD.
We'd also love to hear your thoughts on this film, so to join in the discussion, you can check us out at Time Teamp, that's TIMETEAMP, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or you can email us at timetravelingteamp@teamproductions.com. Now, though, I'm going to give you a quick recap of the film. On a quiet London street, a police officer is doing his rounds when he's attacked by a mysterious assailant. The man is actually a getaway driver for a group of thieves who've just robbed a jeweller's on the street. They flee the scene, futilely pursued by the officer who calls for help with his whistle. He spots a police call box nearby and rushes to it and is shocked to see that it is much bigger on the inside, and it contains an old man and two young girls who are working on various pieces of electronic equipment. He then faints from his injuries, and the old man looks at the events going on outside through a TV monitor. He sees a passerby rushing towards the box, forcing him to make the box disappear. After a while, the officer comes to and introduces himself as Constable Tom Campbell and says that he needs to report the robbery. The old man says it's impossible as they are currently in 2150 AD, thanks to the box, which is his time and space machine, which he calls TARDIS. He introduces himself as Doctor Who, and the girls are his niece Louise and his young granddaughter Susan. Tom, sceptical of their claims, exits the TARDIS and finds himself in the desolated wasteland of London in 2150 AD. Now from here, the movie roughly follows the same storyline as the TV story, The Dalek Invasion of Earth, with some differences. So, the Robo-Men, who are the slaves of the Daleks, are much more uniform, and their conversion process is a lot less dangerous to the specimen being converted. As Susan is a young child in this one, much like the previous movie, she's actually paired with an older Resistance member, Wyler, in a sort of Mando and the child type partnership. Then there's Louise. She gets knocked unconscious during a raid on the Dalek ship, and Tom poses as a Roboman to stay on board to find her. And the Doctor and the younger Resistance member, David, make their own way to the mine as they also try to locate Susan and Wyler. That's the mine in Bedfordshire where the Dalek excavation is happening. So, once the Daleks have been defeated, Doctor Who and the girls drop Tom back to their own time, but a few minutes before the robbery that happens at the jeweller's. Now with the element of surprise, Tom manages to incapacitate the thieves and takes them to the nearest police station as Doctor Who and the girls look on. And that is the end of the movie.
Well, so again, compared to last week, I think there's a few more differences in this week's story.
There is. It actually, it's a lot more expansive in the sense of, like, so as I said, Tom stays on the ship to help find Louise, whereas, like in the TV story, the Doctor, Susan, and David go off together. Ian gets split up from everyone else, and the same with Barbara. After the initial raid on the Dalek ship, everyone gets split off into different pairings. So here, the dynamics are very different, and for the movie, I think it works a lot better because we have a brand new character with Tom, so you don't need to realistically follow the same format. And I think some of the other, I think the pairings are actually, like, what I'm going to say here now at the top of the recording that I prefer the TV serial, but I did actually enjoy this movie, and I do enjoy the pairings that they have in this movie.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah,
I would agree. When we get into character discussion, we can talk about more about like the different changes that were made between each character. But I think just in comparison to last week, this is much more them adding their own bit.
Absolutely, and actually the smuggler character from the TV serial, here he's given a bit more. He's actually given a bit more character, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
and like he betrays the Doctor to the Daleks, and as the Doctor's being taken away, he realizes that the Daleks no longer have any use for him, so they execute him, and you just get this kind of view of a guy that's been so long looking out for himself that he didn't really see, he couldn't see the forest for the trees type thing, you know.
Cool. So let's go on to our trivia. So the release date for this film was the 26th of July 1966. As I mentioned last week, we have the same writer and director in Milton Schabotsky and Gordon Fleming. Our cast, we have two returning members of cast from our previous film. We have Peter Cushing as Doctor Who and Roberta Tovey as Susan. I have seen some comments online that Peter would only return if Roberta was going to be in the film.
Oh.
Apparently he really developed a good dynamic with her and he really wanted her to be in the film.
That's nice. I like that.
As Louise, we have Jill Curzon. Every time I said the word Curzon.
Yeah, Curzon Dax.
Dax.
Yeah, that's all that came into my head.
Jill is known for Hugh and I, Out of This World, and The Champions. As Tom Campbell, we have Bernard Cribbins.
Yay.
Bernard is known for his novelty records, including The Hole in the Ground and Right Said Fred. He's also known for Two-Way Stretch. He was in the Carry On series, The Railway Children, Frenzy, Jack and Nori, not to confuse with Balamori, which I always confuse the two of them. And also what I knew him from growing up, which is that he narrated The Wombles.
So I knew him from, because I never watched the Wombles as a kid. I don't think I ever watched the Wombles until I actually first met you. But I knew from the Carry On series. And actually, it's funny. Alice, like my daughter, for a small bit of time, became obsessed with me singing "Right Said Fred" to her.
I think I remember that. They go over your house and you put it on. Doctor Who fans, though, will recognise Bernard from the David Tennant era of the show, where he portrayed Wilfred Mott, Donna's granddad.
One of the most popular characters of the resurrection or the continuation of the series. We don't say reboot, and as well, like I think he's one of those characters that enters into the are they a companion, are they not a companion debate.
Yeah, very heavily so. I did actually get to meet Bernard a year and a half ago, the time that we're recording this. And he was really, really nice. But like obviously Bernard is quite old at this point. And so his convention appearances, he's only ever there for like a couple of hours. So if you imagine he's doing an hour doing photos and then maybe 2 hours doing autographs, and like people literally queued all morning. And at one point he went to have a break. So went to have a coffee and he didn't return for an hour and a half. And we're all just sat on the floor. But when you went in to meet him, because he's in a completely closed off area, he was so nice to everybody. I was like, okay, this is why things are taking so long. Because he took his time with absolutely everybody. He was an absolute sweetheart.
Well, see, that's the thing about Bernard Cribbins in the sense of that he is one of those, he's a treasured icon of like British film and TV. Like, you know, whether he's the slightly rude guest in Faulty Towers, whether it's again the Carry On series, or his his appearance on the Doctor Who special of Nevermind the Buzzcocks, where he's just like as smart as a whip. He's just one of those treasured people, you know.
So an interesting thing is in this film, his character Tom jokes at the end about how for foiling the bank or the jewellery heist or whatever it was, the robbery, that he should be awarded an OBE, an Order of the British Empire. Bernard himself was awarded an OBE in the 2011 birthday honours for services to drama. And what's actually interesting is that, so now we have Bernard in this film with an OBE, and last week we had, what's his name?
Roy Castle.
Roy Castle also had an OBE. Mm-hmm. Moving on to the rest of our characters. So as David, we have Ray Brooks. Ray also appeared in Taxi, Coronation Street, Danger Man, The Avengers, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Carry On Abroad, and EastEnders. Wyler is played by Andrew Kerr. He's known for Ivanhoe, Cleopatra, Quartermaster in the Pit, The Avengers Again, and Taggart. Andrew passed away in 1997. An interesting thing is Andre Morel was actually offered the role of Wyler, but he couldn't accept because he had signed on to star as Tavanier in The Massacre with William Hartnell, and they had clashing film dates, so he had to pick either doing the film of Doctor Who or doing the TV show, and he picked the TV show. Dortmund is played by Godfrey Quigley. He's known for A Clockwork Orange, Barry Lyndon, and Get Carter, and he passed away back in 1994. Now, long-term Doctor Who fans or long-term listeners of ourselves would probably wonder why we've been talking about Louise and Tom and not Ian and Barbara. So the reason why we don't have Ian and Barbara in this film is basically Roy Castle and Jenny Linden weren't available when the film was greenlit. So they just changed the characters over to Tom and Louise.
And another thing there that I just slightly realised, and I think slightly, is that, what is it this now? This is 2 Doctor Who movies and not a single mention of Z-Cars? Our bingo card looks very sparse.
I don't go as in-depth into these people. I probably could have another look through and see if there's a Z-Cars in their history, but we're going a bit more high level.
No,
I
just
don't think
before.
I saw Z cars, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think that's. I don't think I remember Z cars either. But no, there's one thing I just need to check. Okay, and I'm checking it as we speak. In that there is another actor in this movie that also has extra Doctor Who credits attached to his name, and it is so the guy that plays the smuggler
Yeah.
is played by Philip Maddock, and Philip Maddock plays Solon in Brain of Morbius.
I knew he looked familiar.
Yeah.
I knew he looked familiar.
So, his voice reminded me of the guy that played Noel Coward in the movie you got me to watch years ago, Star. But it's not. It's actually, it's Dr. Solon. So,
Cool. I said
yeah.
I knew that guy sounded familiar. Cool. So I originally had a note in my overall on how I was surprised that Sugar Puffs, the breakfast cereal, survived to 2150 because personally I think they're manky. However, the reason why there's this huge poster next to the TARDIS advertising Sugar Puffs is because Sugar Puffs provided some of the funding for the film.
I have like a weird relationship with Sugar Puffs in the sense of like I always like kind of go, geez, I'd love a bowl of Sugar Puffs, and I buy Sugar Puffs, and then I instantly regret it, not because they taste bad, but because of how fucking sweet they are after the milk mixes with them.
Not their rank, horrible cereal. There were a number of accidents that actually happened on set. One thing that wasn't really an accident, I suppose, is that Peter Cushing did get quite ill at one point, so they had to redo some of his stuff to sort of not have him be on set. But separate from that, a Dalek prop caught fire during the filming of the rebels storming the Dalek ship. A stuntman, Eddie Powell, broke his ankle during a scene in which his character is killed by the Daleks when trying to escape from them. And Andrew Kerr hurt his wrist when punching through the van windscreen during the sequence where they're escaping from London. So, a couple of accidents on this film.
And I was actually going to pass a comment about like that particular escape sequence. I thought it was, it's kind of dumb. It's like it looks like that Darrow Breen sketch of like a guy that's trying to control the snake in Metal Gear Solid, not knowing how to do the controls. But now,
Although, in fairness, like I mean, the one thing I will say, we'll get to this later on in more detail, but the windscreen gets like cracks in it, which would make it difficult to see. So in fairness, he just punches a hole so he can see it, which I thought was actually quite a novel.
I'm talking about Eddie Powell, the guy that actually, he climbs up the rickety building to canopy. Now I feel bad for saying this because of the fact that he got hurt doing that scene. So I will retract my statement and we will move swiftly on.
Okay, my final trivia note is I mentioned last week that the £500 option was for 3 films. So where's the third film? So the third film was originally planned to be an adaptation of The Chase. Now there are rumors going around that this was actually filmed and just never released. That isn't true. The entire production was shelved during the fallout of this film. The box office numbers weren't great, so they decided not to go forward with the third film. I would be really interested in how they would do certain aspects of The Chase without Ian and fucking Barbara in it.
So one thing that I would love to see if this movie had ever been created is someone shouting, "Look behind you, Mr. Dracula," and Peter Cushing going, "No!"
Or just like, Dracula behind you, and Peter Cushing's going, "Where is he? Where?"
But it would only work if Dracula was played by Peter Cushing's lifelong friend, Christopher Lee.
That is very true.
Yeah.
That's very, very true.
They actually
imagine the two of them in a Doctor Who.
Oh, that would be so weird. It'd be really
Brilliant.
weird. But like, I actually saw a movie that Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing were actually were the good guys in it, and throughout the entirety of the movie, I was waiting for Christopher Lee to turn on them.
So that's it for some trivia for this film. So why don't we start talking characters? So we have the return of Doctor Who, not the Doctor. What were your thoughts on Doctor Who this time around?
So this time around, like a lot of the stuff I'm going to be saying now, okay, is I really enjoyed Peter Cushing a lot more in this film because he felt more engaging, and I think that might be the fact that he was split away from Susan and he was split away from Tom and Louise, and his pairing with young David was actually I thought it was a really, really cool thing. There is a bit more physicality this time around, because he's taken for the Roboman conversion process, and there's that escape sequence in it, or the fight sequence. And one thing I'm going to say now about fight sequences in this movie: every time there's a fight sequence, a jazz quartet magically breaks out of nowhere and just starts, scat jitterbugging around the place. It's fantastically 60s. So I know, again, he's really good in this. His chemistry with everyone is fantastic. I think that this would have been a performance that would have potentially kind of made people kind of go, what, I could actually see him taking over in the show type of thing,
Yeah, apparently, like, there was discussions back in the 60s and 70s to have him do the show. I think there was talk of him taking over from John Pertwee at one point, or might have been instead of John Pertwee. I can't remember.
And obviously there's the whole thing of, like, where do these movies fit into the canon of Doctor Who? And I think the last recorded statement is that these exist as theatrical films in the world of Doctor Who, based on accounts.
There was some mention somewhere in my trivia.
Yeah, I think
Peter Cushing is mentioned in Doctor Who.
Yeah, I think it was like for the novelization of the 50th anniversary story, Day of the Doctor, that there was movies based upon repeated sightings of the man in the blue box and all this type of stuff.
But I think like Peter Cushing is Peter Cushing in the
Doctor Who universe.
As in like there's mention of him.
Yeah,
I would agree with you on him being much more substantial in this film.
Yeah,
I don't know if there was more unique writing for him to deal with, because like Doctor Who and the Daleks, bar the beginning and the end, was almost scene for scene in some cases the same as the film, or the same as the serial rather. So with this one, because there was so much, because it was just Doctor Who and David, and Susan wasn't with them, and obviously in the TV serial Hartnell had been out, so he hadn't been in a lot of it. I wonder if it's that he got to actually make the character his own, as opposed to having to spend time trying not to be Bill Hartnell.
And I think I'd agree with that, and I'd also think that there's it actually kind of adds merit to the thing you said last week, which is that in the first movie it's his first adventure, so he's very thrown in at the deep end, whereas here he's got a bit more experience when he's traveling. Now he knows that they're up against the Daleks, so he's calling upon past experience to help make his choices. So I think that adds to his kind of substantious. I can't think of the word. You know what I mean? Yeah. Him as a character in this movie.
He does have a few quirks that are I'm now considering to be uniquely like Peter Cushing Doctor Who. One of them is he can't go anywhere without his gloves on.
Yep.
Every 5 seconds. I'm like, why did you take them off? But then every scene ends with him putting his gloves back on. And it happened so often that like I started taking note of it. Like,
so it's either he's challenged people to a duel off screen, or he's getting ready to drive and mow stuff down.
Maybe. The one thing as well that I liked about him here, perhaps a bit more than the Doctor in the TV serial, is, and this may just be me misremembering, so feel free to correct me, is his plan on how to defeat the Daleks. While the science behind it is nonsense, it's very much he's going in with the plan of we need to deviate this to go over there, and like because of him being with David and not having Susan there, him going into the camp and meeting with the smuggler and meeting with the guy on the inside who helped Tom and Louise. Because the Doctor in the TV show didn't do that, he had no idea for a lot of it what was actually happening inside the plant.
Yeah, because in the movie, all the parties kind of tie up together before the big final showdown, whereas in the TV serial, everyone is still separate, and like so Ian, which in this case would be Tom, he only really sees the guys during like the mass breakout at the end.
Yeah.
Whereas here he's part of the plan to infiltrate.
Yeah.
So obviously, yeah, like I think the plans would like the plot is still the same. You know, the Daleks want to make the Earth the mobile oppression palace of the universe, stealing something there from Futurama. But so there's a united front versus the oh god, will everyone get back together before the whole mine explodes type of thing of the serial.
Yeah, I think in the context of the films where we have Susan and Doctor Who being the only carryover characters, it makes more sense for him to be the knowledgeable leader of the group rather than, by the time we get to this point in the TV show, this is what, like the 12th story or something?
This is 10. This is number
10th
10.
story.
Yeah.
So by this point, all of our characters have sort of shown their ability to lead or their ability to get on with things by themselves. In the film, they haven't shown that.
Yeah.
So it makes more sense for him, which I kind of liked. It was a nice, unique thing for Doctor Who to do that the Doctor wasn't able to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So moving on to our companions, unless you have any other comment on Doctor Who.
No, I think we kind of pretty much covered all about Doctor Who in this night. It's so weird to call him Doctor Who.
It's so bizarre. Even when I was posting last week's episode, several times when I was uploading it to Podbean, which is where we host our podcast, I wrote down Doctor Who and the Daleks, like DOCTOR. Mm-hmm. But then I actually looked up, and it is actually like DR lowercase or full stop. It's not actually the word Doctor; it's the title Doctor.
The Who.
So moving on to our companions. So we have Tom and Louise, who are our new companions. We have Susan returning, and then we have our Resistance members. So perhaps if we do Susan first, and then do Tom and Louise, and then circle back around to our Resistance people.
So, what are your thoughts on Susan this time around?
I like Susan. I do. But
nothing fucking phases her at all?
Nothing phases this child whatsoever. And she's too fearless. Like, TV Susan, we've said, sometimes screams a bit too much. Mm-hmm. Film Susan is a fucking robot. Like, nothing phases this child whatsoever. And it gets to the point where between herself and Wyler, she is the leader of that duo, which is silly because she's like 11.
Yeah.
Do you know, it comes across as silly when you have the little girl being the leader in the resistance fighter duo, which makes no sense.
Like, there's a thing there that kind of... So I made the comparison of Mando and the child earlier on, but it's more of a thing of where, like, a series of manga that I read called Lone Wolf and Cub, and I absolutely love it, deals with a small child called Daigoro. Now, Daigoro, I think, is like 3 when the series starts, but he's so used to his father just like killing people and his own tricked out baby cart, which is essentially a murder machine. Nothing phases him. He has absolutely no phasing at all with the violence, and that's what kind of rings true here with Susan, in the sense of, like, Wyler is like defending her, and she's like, "Job well done. Let's move on, shall we?"
Yeah, and like even like when Wyler's the only one to come back from the attack on the Dalek ship, there's no urgency to her. You know, it's like, oh, I saw your grandfather escape. I don't know about Louise and Tom. No, Tom she hardly knows. Louise is her cousin.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I don't know who mentioned. Louise is the niece in this film, to differentiate her from Barbara.
No, I said it this in
you did, yeah. Sorry. But there's no urgency about her.
Which leads to the question, did Doctor Who build Susan?
I wouldn't be surprised if he did. She's the lull to his data, or the data to his son.
I was just thinking that. I was like literally just thinking that, like, it was a case of like emotionless child.
Possibly. I said she's a nice character. She's a nice kid. Yeah. She's a good actor or whatever, but she's just a robot. Like, you need to have her reacting
Yeah.
to something. Even like when she gets reunited with Doctor Who, yeah, they give each other a hug, but like, that's it. I don't know if there's a companion from the show that she can really be compared to in terms of her age. Obviously, we young Amelia in Matt Smith's run, but she was only in one episode.
Yeah, and even then, like, she never traveled, so she was never exposed to this type of shenanigans.
And Adric was older, wasn't he?
Adric was like, yeah, Adric was in his teens. He was like, 14, 15, I think.
Yeah, and I haven't seen any of his stuff to compare, so.
Like, there's nothing comparable here. Like, there's no comparable companion.
I thought of one.
Who?
K9.
I'm sorry, but John Leeson has more fucking expression than this child. But again,
Also
as
a
you
lovely
said,
man to be at a convention, by the way.
but again, as you said, that could very well be down to to the direction, which is, you're meant to be fearless. Very well. I am without fear.
Yeah. So moving on to Tom and Louise. We do Tom first?
Yeah.
What do you think of Tom?
I think Tom would have been a fantastic addition as a companion to the series.
I would agree.
Bernard Cribbins is fantastic in this. And we actually so we talked last week about how Roy Castle, it's buffoonery on his part playing Ian.
Yeah.
And everything is done by luck. Now, Bernard Cribbins, who has probably a more substantial background in comedic acting, has two, what I would say, quasi-comedic moments in this. One is when he opens a door and he falls, out into essentially nothingness. And it does look a bit silly, but at the same time...
It was also in the show.
Yeah, it's also on the show, and he plays it really well. And the other time is when Louise's code accidentally activates a food conveyor belt, and he's just there trying to hoof it all back up the conveyor belt. And like it is funny, but like there's a logic to behind the scene, So I liked it. I think he would have been a fantastic companion. If he had slotted just after Ian and maybe before Ben, it would have been perfect. But like he's like, as I said, he's intelligent, he's capable, he's brave. Not that brave is a huge requirement to be a companion. Like I would say, capability and intelligence more so than anything. Like he's more than just like an action man. He's more just a bit of muscle, and he's just also he's just, because it's Bernard Cribbins. Every time he smiles or he just pulls one of those faces, it's just like you want to go, no, you cannot die. You are not allowed to die in this movie.
Yeah, like personally, I think he was a great replacement from movie Ian, and had they named his character Ian, I would have been perfectly happy with that. If they were like, oh, for this film, Ian isn't traveling with them already, this Bernard Cribbins character is Ian, I would have been perfectly happy to accept that. He is very capable, willing and able to get stuck in, and he can take care of himself and others, which is exactly what Ian from the TV show does. He's not as awesome as TV Ian, because TV Ian is amazing, but also he'd never traveled before, so this is his first adventure, so that has to be kept in mind as well. Again, this was story 10 for TV Ian. It's story 1 for film Tom.
Just to cut across you there, William Russell, in case you're listening, I think you're in with a shot.
But all in all, I thought Tom was great. One of the things I really liked about him, the way they go about it in the film leads to all these time travel timeline questions, but I like the fact that at the end he just goes back to being a policeman, and his only thing is, can you drop me back like a few minutes earlier so I can catch those guys? But like he goes back, like he puts on his uniform again, and he goes out and he does his job. His job is to be a policeman, and he's got some ideals that like he'll get an OBE and all that kind of stuff. But being a policeman is his thing. Even though he fared perfectly well in the time travel thing, his thing was, nope, I'm a policeman, which is great.
Yeah, and I'd wonder if they would bring him back for the third movie, if the third movie had happened, if like they pick him up along the way, you know, because he had associated with the Doctor or something like that, you know. Cool. So that is Louise next, yes? Unless you're
Yeah.
going to
So
I'll do my notes first, and you can do your notes.
Go.
Her name is Louise. She is the Doctor's niece. She wears a tan beige outfit. That is all. Literally, that is the only contribution I can think of for Louise in this. She is a non-entity. She really is. I think she's only a plot device just to have Tom be on the Dalek ship.
So I had an issue with Barbara last week when I said that the only reason Barbara was in Doctor Who and the Daleks was to be an excuse for Ian to be in the film.
Yeah.
Louise is the excuse to have Tom be in the film. Because again, they can't just have Doctor Who and Tom with an 11-year-old Susan, because that's weird. So they need to have an adult of a similar age to Tom who has a connection with Louise and is female. Or connection with Susan, rather, and is female. So they brought in Louise. But the thing that bothers me, right, is like Tom was great. Tom was probably, for me, the best thing in this film. Maybe go out on a limb. I think the best thing in the film.
And that's just not bias for Bernard Cribbins, like, in the sense of like Tom is actually the most enjoyable character in this whole.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. But so the original actors from the first film couldn't come back to reprise the roles of Ian and Barbara. Just recast them. Don't change them into different people. Just say that Louise is Barbara and just move on with it. Her hair colour is the right colour compared to your one last week. But like, just say that it's Barbara. Why say that it's this niece that he has who also is a scientist? Like, how many female relatives does he have that are interested in science? But the thing is that, like, while Barbara in last week's film did bugger all, it's Barbara and it's the Dalek Invasion of Earth in the year 2150 AD, which we have both agreed time and again, one of the most badass Barbara stories that there is.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Between her joining in the attack on the Dalek ship,
pulling a Ripley in the fire truck,
bullshitting the Daleks with all of this historical battle strategy, and, you know, figuring out that, oh, you can use the Dalek voice box to tell the Robomen to do whatever. She did so much in the serial, and you're not going to have her be in the film. Not only are you not going to have her be in the film, you're going to have her replacement not do any of the things that she did. Not a single one of them. So, did she join in on the attack on the Dalek ship? I would say she was there.
Yeah.
She didn't throw anything. She didn't have a weapon. She was there. She wandered on board. She went into a random room, got knocked unconscious, and woke up on the ship. The only reason why she's on the ship is to give Tom a reason to stay on the ship. Whereas in the story, Ian had a completely different reason to stay on the ship. That's the only reason why she's there, is to give Tom a reason to stay. She is sidelined completely from the mine plan, as in Doctor Who literally says to David to take her somewhere else. Like, she doesn't even have an opinion. And it's just like, what is your problem with, like, you were given possibly one of the greatest female science fiction leading ladies of the 60s. You were given her a complete template. You had 16 freaking stories to pull from. And this is the character that you create? Based off one of the original character's best stories? Come on, like. And also, stupid question. Why does she refer to her uncle, Doctor Who, as Doctor? It's not his fucking name in this universe, it's his title. That'd be like me calling my dad Mister.
Yeah.
The only comparison I can make, if I'm being honest, I do sometimes call my uncle Father, but that's because he's a priest. He is Father Liam. So, yeah. But that's different. He's actually a priest.
No, that's completely different. That's like, no, like, it's just like even if you're like, you know, on very close terms with like a family friend who's a priest or whatever like that, or if you have family members that are priests, you always refer to them as father. You never refer to them by whatever, you know.
Yeah, I'd never call him Liam. That'd be weird.
No, but it's just I don't know. I really don't, and I actually feel like a bit bad for Jill Curzon and the actress whose name I can't remember, unfortunately, that plays Barbara, in the sense of
Jenny Linden.
So at this stage of the game now, right, Doctor Who is a huge cultural phenomenon that's sweeping the UK, and if they're making a movie of it, that's pretty big, You sign on for it, and this is the part you're given. I just feel bad,
Yeah, it's like, can you imagine being one of these two actresses, and part of your research for this film is watching the show, and you're watching Jacqueline Hill as Barbara, and you're like, oh my god, she's brilliant, she's amazing, she's intelligent, she's brave, she's witty, she can hold her own. Yeah, she screams a bit and she gets captured, but she always tries to find her own way out. Fucking brilliant character. And then you read these scripts, and you have. I joked last week that I thought Barbara had maybe 5 lines. I don't think Louise even has that many.
No, I think she's got about in and around the same. If she doesn't have any more, I know that much. But I'd say she might have in and around the same. Yeah. Because again, there's just no. I'm finding it hard to picture a scene of her without either Tom or the Doctor or Doctor Who involved in it.
There is the closest one is the assault on the Dalek ship. But whereas in the show we had that great scene, or that great shot of Barbara. I think Susan was with her, and we had what was her name? The woman who pairs up with Barbara.
Oh, it's Jenny, isn't it?
Jenny, yeah. And with that great sort of shot of the three of them, and they've got the bombs in their hands, and they're ready to chuck them, and that's great because it shows that she's involved. Louise is just there, and she wanders in, and wanders around, and then gets stuck and can't wander back out again. The whole thing with her and Tom, you kind of get. I got the sense anyway at the end. She's straightening his police uniform. And I got Major Crimes vibes. The episode of Major Crimes where they take Buzz out, and you have Sharon fixing Andy's uniform, right?
Yeah.
Complete tangent, but I'm like, was there meant to be a romantic thing between the two of them?
Possibly.
But I didn't see it.
But then again, I think that's a bit of a trope for movies like this. In the sense of it's not explicitly shown there, but it's just assumed. But
they were alone on the Dalek ship for a while. They had scenes together. There was no indication of anything between them. So, yeah, I think Louise, similar to Barbara last week. Louise who?
Yep. Actually, yeah.
So on to our Resistance members. We don't have Jenny this time around.
No, we don't.
We have Wyler, David, and Dortmund. I just realised I wrote nothing down for Dortmund. I didn't really care about him that much to write anything down.
I just want to ask you something there, okay? So just kind of, in this one, do you think he's slightly more unhinged than Dortmund in the TV serial? Or is it sort of on the same level?
I think it's on the same level. I think Dortmund in the TV serial was better prepared. But he was also more of a dick. Dortmund in this, you sort of imagine, you don't get the idea that he was designing all of these weapons. You don't get that same idea. His notes aren't the same. There's no whole thing around what's in the bombs. These bombs are special. You don't get any of that. The closest thing you get to him being slightly unhinged is him going on about it'll work, but
yeah, see, with Dortmund in the thing, and in the TV serial, it was always this whole thing of my way is the best way, my way is the only way that will work, and it's like, you know, if the plan fails, it's like, well, never fear, I'll fix to make it better, you know. Whereas here, he just like, it's this like assumption that they're actually like they're already winning, or they're already like their big push is going to be, regardless of what the bombs are or anything like that. The Daleks won't match them, and maybe it's just, again, like, because I haven't watched Dalek Invasion of Earth in a while. That is it, like recency bias, where it's like maybe this guy just seems a bit more fucking whacked out than that Dortmund.
The one thing that I'd be interested to get your thoughts on is the sacrifice
Yeah,
that the Dortmunds make. So, in the TV show, he had all of these notes about weapons that they can use, and it was very important that they get to show those notes to the Doctor and blah blah blah. And in the end, he takes his weapons and he rolls out into the street and tries to destroy the Daleks. In the film, there's no mention of his notes. There's no mention of research or anything else. He gets a little bit odd at Wyler trying to help him into the truck. And so he decides to open the doors for them to drive off. And then he knows the Dalek coming, and he wheels his way up, and then he throws the bomb and destroys them. Did you read those two scenes a different way? TV versus film.
So TV, Dortmund realizes that his plans have not gone the way that he wanted. He thinks he still has the key to success, but he knows that he won't be able to be the one to do it. So he passes it on to someone that he knows can carry it on, and he then sacrifices himself to buy time for Barbara and Jenny to get away. Here, I think it's very much a case of come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. And any sort of sympathy I would have felt for Dortmund in the TV series, I don't have it here. I don't like Dortmund in this movie.
Oh.
Similar thoughts? Or
Yeah, pretty much. I think the Dortmund on TV, again, bearing in mind the TV serial was how many episodes long?
6.
You have longer. I think the Dortmund character in the TV serial was better developed.
Yeah.
You got to see him interacting more. You got to see him in the leadership role more. So his decisions make more sense. So then we have Wyler. Who at the beginning, I was just like, Wyler equals grumpy bollocks.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier his truck versus Daleks moment. His truck versus Daleks moment was nowhere near as awesome as Barbara's.
No. Mostly, again, because that jazz quartet was in the background following him.
You just reminded me of... Do you remember that folk singer that Panda introduced us to?
Martin Pearson.
Martin Pearson is like, it would really help if they weren't followed by
Sauron's full body contact chamber orchestra
playing Symphony for Unsubtle Bastards.
I was actually looking at that there again soon because that's so good. Just for reference, Martin Pearson, he did a comedic album based on what if the Lord of the Rings trilogy by Peter Jackson was a musical.
It's brilliant. It's fantastic.
He uses contemporary songs like I'm Falling by the Beatles, which is Balrog versus Gandalf as they're falling into the thing, or Burning Love, which is Denethor jumping off the tower in Minas Tirith. But yeah, we're digressing here. What I like about Wyler in this, right, is that he's a grumpy old bastard, and he doesn't change. He's with Susan the entirety of the thing, and he doesn't have that, underneath there's like a sweetheart interior. No, he's literally just a grumpy bollocks the entire way through. And I actually thought that was kind of refreshing. I really enjoyed that. Plus, I think it's just like that gruff Scottish accent, When you said he was in Taggart, I was like, of course he was in fucking Taggart. Every Scottish actor was in Taggart.
Yeah, I think I liked his dynamic with Susan because he treats her as a child, but not as an idiot.
Yeah.
Aside from the one moment where she played a trick on him and went boo. Yeah. And he basically told her, cop the fuck on. Are you fucking shitting me? What are you doing?
a case of, if you weren't a small child, I would fucking hoof you out of this fucking car.
Yeah, but like he seems very protective of her, and even I had to laugh. There was a moment when they've been reunited with the Doctor, but the Daleks have captured them, and they're taking them through the mine Dalek base thing, and there's a Dalek comes rushing down the corridor, and Susan's just stood in the middle, like holding hands with both of them, and the Doctor Who goes to pull her to one side. And Wyler's just like, no, fuck you, and yanks her over to his side. As if he's go, no, you went away and left her by herself. I'm protecting her now. It's my job.
But I just get the impression like that, when he finally has to say goodbye, he hands her off like, like a baby with a dirty nappy. It's like, you change her now.
Oh, no, he was a good character.
I think Wyler is probably the second best character in this movie.
I would agree. And lastly, we have David, who's as blind as a fucking bat.
All right, so I was going to say the exact same thing. Like, dude, are you fucking blind? And the reference for people is that Susan writes a message on the back of a door for for her grandfather that basically says, "We're going here." David and the Doctor. I have to say the Doctor because it's just weird to say otherwise. Okay, David and Peter Cushing are in this room for at least 5 minutes. And for 4 of those minutes, he is staring at the door. He can see the message. Yet, after they leave, the Doctor goes, I wonder why she didn't leave a message for us.
Yeah, like, part of me is like, one, Susan, don't write notes on retractable doors. Because the door retracts. It doesn't like swing open or close. It's a sliding door that retracts into the wall. So when the door is open, which is the only time Doctor Who was looking in that direction, you can't see the message. David was looking at it when the door was fucking shut, and the message was there in huge writing in chalk, like white chalk on a green door.
Yeah.
I will say one thing though, and this isn't to David's benefit because he's fucking stupid. Is, Susan, why did you write on a door?
Yeah. Why not on a piece of paper in the lab or...
Piece of paper in the lab, near the map, like the central thing, on any of the sort of boards that they had around. Why on a retractable door? Do you just like writing in chalk? I like writing in chalk, but do you just like writing in chalk? Was that it? But yeah, David is blind as a fucking bat. He doesn't hold a candle to TV, David.
No.
I wouldn't trust this guy to keep fucking a fish alive, never mind anything else.
The best analogy I always give to someone is like, it's like I wouldn't trust him to tie his own shoelaces.
Yeah, agreed. No.
And I think that is it for the brave members of the Resistance of 2150 AD. God help the future. So now we move on to the villains.
Yes. So we have the Robomen and the Daleks.
Also, just came into my head, hello and welcome to the villains of the film.
I have been, you may have noticed this in the script for our intro and outro. I've been using the word film rather than movie. Because Doctor Who, the movie, is a separate thing. So I've been trying to use theatrical film, and it's a film. But every time I hear the word film, all I hear is, welcome to the middle of the film. And I'm like, fuck's sake.
This might help in future. Apparently there is actually a alternative title to the Doctor Who movie. I think it's actually called The Enemy Within.
Ah.
Yeah. But it's officially called Doctor Who the movie, but an alternative title is The Enemy Within, I think.
Okay. A bit late now.
Yeah. Oh God, I feel like anything. So, we have the Daleks and the Robomen.
Yeah, so we did the Robomen first.
Cool. Now, for me, I'm actually kind of torn about the design of the Robomen in this one. So, as I said, they're a bit more uniform in the sense of they all look like judges from the 2000 AD comics, like the early versions of them. They wear a weird motorcycle helmet with visor, and they're all wearing like a black pleather jumpsuit. Now, while that's cool, I still like the very slapped together Borg-like look of the Robomen in the TV serial, because here they look more like militia rather than converts to help the Daleks, you know?
I prefer them in the film.
Yeah?
Yeah, I hated the Robomen helmets in the TV show. I thought they looked stupid. A biker helmet with some sort of like heat shield glasses in the visor, for me, I think works a lot better for these characters. The pleather, I don't care. But I think they're more believable as a force that were keeping everyone working in the mine. The Robomen, because the way they were done in the TV show as kind of brainless, automatons essentially, you kind of get the sense that if you locked one in a cupboard, he couldn't find his way out. Do you know?
Yeah.
Whereas in the film, we see them marching, we see them breaking off in patrols. They don't speak all the time because they have the little thingy on their helmet, so they don't need to. So personally, I thought the design of them was better in the film.
See, that's where I'm kind of torn, because normally, I don't mind a kind of a militia type thing, when it comes to terms as a servitor unit, as in fuck's sake, look at the Jem'Hadar.
Yeah.
Something very, very similar. But there's just something for me when it comes to a desolated, or dystopian type future. If your essential workforce, or the thing that keeps your workforce in check, is some weird, hollowed out husk of essentially a servitor drone, it's just very eerie and it's very creepy. And but I kind of like stuff like that, because again, I think in the Warhammer 40k universe, a lot of the servitors are just kind of people that are, well, they're going to die, we might as well just turn them into fucking automatons. But I remember making the point that's just for the design of them now, okay? But I remember making the point in the Dalek Invasion of Earth that I didn't really see the need for them, because I didn't think, that the Daleks needed, kind of a servitor workforce, in the sense of that they can do it all themselves. Whereas here, I think it actually works better because of the uniforms, but I'm torn on the uniforms, which I think is strange.
It also works better in the film because we're kind of given a reason why they need them, which is that the Daleks can't go near the original shaft of the mine, which is the whole ending of the film.
Yeah.
They can't go near where the mining group was originally mining down into. They can't go near that original part of the mine because of the magnetism of the North and South Poles. We'll ignore that. They can't go near there. So it shows that there are times and places where the Daleks cannot do the job themselves. So it makes sense to have these sort of servitor converted people. It made no sense in the TV show because that bit wasn't there. It's like, well, okay, Daleks can't do stairs. Was that why they had them?
No, it's proven as of the chase that the Daleks can handle stairs.
Yeah, but the chase came after.
No, it didn't.
Oh.
This is 1966. The chase came out in London, 1965.
No, but as in the chase came after the original version of the story.
Right. Yeah, okay.
Smart ass.
Fair enough. Also, the way that you said the whole North and South Pole thing is the exact same way Darrow Breen talks about the 2012 movie. The neutrinos have mutated. It's just that state of hatred.
Warming up the atmosphere.
Tequila. Oh God.
Add that to a team day, by the way. Just
exactly. No, I see. As I said, right, as a militia force, they work better here. As I said, in that sort of weird Jem'Hadar type thing. I'm just torn on the design of them.
Yeah,
and that's the only aspect of it.
Cool. So if we look then at the Daleks themselves, what do you think of them?
So, Daleks are Daleks. They really are. Other than, look at all the pretty colours, because they're all there's a huge variety of different colours here. Okay, because this is an adaptation of the second story, I can't really add a whole lot more because they're following the pattern, as you kind of just pointed out to me there, smart arse, that they're following the pattern of the stories that had been, I suppose, released in and around that time. Okay? Or like that they were following in that time. So you don't really see, like there's no real, as far as I can remember, okay? There's no real huge advancements in Daleks until we come to the Patrick Troughton story, Power of the Daleks, which we'll be covering soon. Because in the chase, it's just a commando unit going after them, with obviously their own time machine. So that's kind of that's an entity of itself, but it's not discovered. Talked about here. And then in the Daleks Master Plan, it's just a wider spread of how the Dalek Society works. So for this movie, I can't really say a whole lot more than I've already said because there's nothing new or unique about them.
Yeah. I'm pretty much the same. I had 3 notes on them. One, the Dalek coming out of the water was nowhere near as intimidating as it was in the show.
It looked like he was on a jet ski.
Yeah, in color, it didn't work.
Not so much with the color. I just think because it came out way too fast. In the TV series, it comes out in that weird, slow Jason Voorhees arising from the lake type thing. Whereas here, it looks like there should be a boat pulling him up.
The second thing that I did like was their spaceship was much more impressive. It did look a little bit like something from Thunderbirds, but I thought it was quite impressive. I thought the use of the model was really good. I thought its design was quite interesting. I thought that was really good.
Yeah, no, I'd agree.
The third thing, though, and this goes back to something we discussed last week, it wasn't as obvious last week because Doctor Who and the Daleks never left the city, their city that they built for them. And so most of the action was in fairly close quarters. In this film, though, they're out in the streets, or they're in the mining camp, or they're in the woods, or whatever the case would be. The fire extinguisher weapons are a bit shit. Because there's several scenes where clearly someone runs through the very edges of the reach of the fire extinguisher. So they're clearly being covered in little bits of fire extinguisher, but nothing happens to them.
But see, this is the thing now as well, right? Because, as you said, like in the last movie, we assume that their lethality is based on their effective range. So if you get hit by the smoke, you're done for. But that chase sequence where we talked about earlier on, where the guy essentially climbs up into the ruins of a building and then starts running across the building tops, is obviously way outside of the range of the smoke. Yet they fire, and the thing explodes, causing him to fall down. So it's just confusing.
Yeah, you know? It's just this inconsistency that I don't quite understand why they did it that way. There was
just get a gun and shoot him.
Yeah, it either make sure people run through a considerably dense part of the fire extinguisher. Okay, so just make sure that your extras or your stuntmen or whatever make sure to run through the actual blast of the fire extinguisher, or use something else.
Yeah, because see, the Robomen, they use a sort of a weird light/seismic or sonic cannon. And it's like, okay, like it lights up, and then you have the bang at the opposite end of its target. That works fine. Yeah. You don't need to see the ray to know that it's deadly. Yeah. But if you have something that's showing an effective range of a fire, a bullet or whatever, it's got to make sense, and it's weird here. So I think in that regards, when they're out in the street, the Daleks shouldn't seem like, it's like, yeah, I can out-jog you.
Yeah.
That's pretty much fucking it.
Yeah, which, like I said, I didn't notice it as much in last week's movie because it was all close quarters. Even, like, the final battle in the control room or whatever. You had lots of Daleks in a very large room, but still relatively close quarters. So that was my...
Or that one Dalek that just like 100 miles an hour just goes down the corridor and blasts into the wall.
That's the other thing, actually. So the ending of this film, just remind me, the ending of this film, they basically redirect the bomb down the original mine shaft, so it detonates in this North Pole, South Pole convergence magnetic field point, whatever. But basically, it does... For anyone who's watched the modern era of Doctor Who, and you watch Doomsday, where all of the Daleks get sucked through the void. It essentially does that. And there's something hilariously funny about Daleks just being yanked backwards and like flying off ledges and toppling over railings, just falling down a hole. It was quite humorous.
I think it might be because of the poor fucking stuntman inside going, "Oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god."
Yeah, but it was that was funny. That was funny.
So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the Daleks.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
So how about we move on to our overall feelings about this particular film?
Yes. So, better than the first film.
Yes, absolutely.
However, there was no badass bullshitting Barbara. So can it even be called a movie of Daleks Invasion of Earth? I don't think so.
So, right, but again, as we kind of said the last time for the last movie, if we had seen this before we had ever watched the show, that doesn't really play into it.
True.
No, don't get me wrong. I think it's like this isn't a patch.
No.
It's not a patch on the Daleks Invasion of Earth. However, as a standalone movie, I think it's actually enjoyable. And compared to last week's one, I would actually watch this again.
Yeah. So as a standalone film, it was alright. I quite enjoyed it. A bit simple in terms of how science and time travel works. As an adaptation, though, it doesn't work. The thing that makes it alright and not great for me as a film, though, is the same thing as last week. Character development. None of these characters change from the beginning of the film to the end of the film. So it's missing the heart of what made the TV serial what it was. Now, a lot of that is due to the fact that the heart of the TV serial, The Daleks Invasion of Earth, was Susan.
Yes.
Susan's growth and Susan's struggle with should she stay on Earth or should she go with her grandfather, and then ultimately the Doctor making that choice for her. Because Susan is the robot child in this film, she's too young for them to have done that original plot from the serial, so that doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But also, they replaced Barbara with Louise, but didn't give her any of Barbara's plot points to do. So you could even have Louise start off as a little bit quiet or whatever, and have her have to go through all the things Barbara went through. And that would give you a nice little bit of a character development curve. Same with Tom. We said it last week with Ian. Tom starts and ends the film the exact same person that he was. Mm-hmm. He's still a policeman. He's still trying to do his best. Not faulting any of that. But it's not that he had any sort of... There was nothing for him to personally overcome. Same with Doctor Who. There was nothing for him to personally overcome. So it's very much a sit down, turn off your brain and watch a fun film, which is fine. But if you're going to have it be an adaptation of a Doctor Who story, you're missing the whole point.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of that's something that can be said for a lot of different things like that. As an adaptation, they can be absolutely terrible, but as a standalone entity, they actually can be quite you can sit down, you can enjoy them, you can watch them away, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like what we for me, it's what we have here.
Yeah, I would agree. Should you go out and watch it? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Bernard Cribbins and Peter Cushing is a fantastic duo. It's a
If for no other reason than those two, I would recommend it. If you're a fan of the serial, just bear in mind there's going to be differences.
And we're talking about the TV series now, not Sugar Puffs. We've already established that.
Sugar Puffs are rank.
Yeah.
Actually, you just reminded me of something.
Mm-hmm.
The Robomen. So there's this really funny scene where the Robomen are effectively refueling themselves and having a bit of a nap. And Tom sort of inserts himself into it and plays along with everyone, which I think is... that's Bernard's comedy.
Yeah, I forgot about that sequence.
But, they're eating, these little, sugar pebbles. Is that the American cereal? These little colourful balls.
Yeah.
And I'm like...
Oh, fruity pebbles.
Fruity pebbles. That's the one. And they're going, really? You need to keep this controlling workforce, able to control the humans, and you go with Fruity Pebbles and a glass of water.
I'm just remembering a thing from Rick and Morty now. Who's ready for some pill? Was it pill brulee?
But yeah, I don't know. You mentioned sugar puffs, and that just entered my mind.
So I think that is it for our rambling review of Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD. Quite possibly the best science fiction title of all time.
Okay, right. Look. Why do I think the title is shit? Now, I am well aware that there is a number of science fiction and, genre films from that time period that do the same sort of naming convention. We mentioned Dracula something or other AD last week.
Yeah.
However, Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD are just random fucking words. It's not
there is no of.
Yes, it's not the Daleks Invasion of Earth brackets 2150 AD. That would be fine. I would have no issue if that was the title of the fucking thing, because at least in the TV show it was Doctor Who and the Daleks Invasion of Earth, which is a full, complete sentence that makes sense. This makes no fucking sense. It's just random words because they couldn't afford small words with only like 2 or 3 letters in them. Yes, I'm weird, okay? You should have gotten used to this by now.
No, you continually surprise me. I'm only finding out today about sugar puffs. Jesus. So, what do we have next week?
So, next week we have one more rambling before the following week we get back to our standard programming, or we'll be picking up with the next Doctor in the series with Patrick Troughton. Next week we're going to be joined by our friends Dan and Paul from the Half Measures podcast to discuss the BBC docudrama An Adventure in Space and Time. Yeah, so we'll have 2 more people in our conversations next week.
Absolutely. And hopefully we will have maybe a bit of a quiz for them as well, because they tested our knowledge.
They did. So for those who aren't aware, a number of months ago at this point, sorry it's taken us so long, Dan and Paul. A number of months ago, Dan and Paul had us as guests on their show, where they, interviewed myself and Paddy about the whole podcast thing. And they gave us a bit of a Doctor Who quiz at the end, which I think we did all right.
Yeah, I think other than Paul's sneak questions, I think we did very good.
Yeah, so after we do the review of An Adventure in Space and Time next week, we're going to have a sort of secondary part of the episode where, we'll chat away to Dan and Paul, and then I'm going to unleash Paddy on them in terms of the quiz. Because when it comes to quiz questions, Paddy Fox is a devious bastard.
Who, me?
Awesome.
Cool. So that's it, guys. Once again, thanks for listening, and we will speak to you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.